Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 15th, 2020 North Idaho College Board of Trustees meeting. The first thing we'd like to do is do the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll join me, we'll go ahead and start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum tonight, however, Trustee Murray is not available. Everyone has had time to review the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, those minutes will stand as printed. There is no one for a public comment, and so the first item on the agenda will then be celebrating success, and Dr. Lita Burns will introduce that celebrating success.
Chair Dunlap, members of the board, it's my pleasure this evening to introduce Gail Ballard and Laura Godfrey, who will be speaking about our Student Learning Outcomes Assessment. Student Learning Outcomes Assessment is among the most important things we do at the institution because it provides evidence that we do what we say we are here to do, and that is to teach students and to have students learn. And so they are going to present to you the good work that has gone on, particularly in our GEM courses, our General Education Matriculation courses, but also we have begun to really look at program outcomes, and they've done some amazing work in that arena too. I'm really grateful for the dedication that they have to this project and to this ongoing work that we have to do at North Idaho College, and I'm sure you're going to be very excited to hear what they have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lita, and thank you to the board and Chair Dunlap. I am Laura Godfrey, and as of last January, I took over as chair for the Student Learning Outcomes Assessment Committee. It is a committee that I have been on for a good portion of my adult life, I will say that. 12 years to date, and this is my fearless assistant chair, Gail Ballard. She is in the education department, and she's also the assistant dean of general studies. We wanted to take some time tonight to talk to you about some of the work that we've really been proud of accomplishing over the last year and even longer. It's work that's been in the making on this committee for some time. But before we get to some of the specifics, we wanted to frame for you the values that drive the work that Student Learning Outcomes Assessment at NIC is driven by. And we really believe that this is work that has to be faculty driven. The faculty members are the ones in the classes standing there working with the students, leading workshops, giving tests, assigning papers. And so any assessment practice has to be organic and it has to be born from the faculty perspective. That's really important to our committee. We also very much believe in solid research, and so all of the assessment practices that we have for classes and programs on campus are thoroughly researched and grounded in best practices from other colleges and universities across the country. We want to make sure that we're in line with the good work that's being done at these institutions so that we're serving our faculty and our students well. And we also, Gail and I and the committee believe that all of this work, gathering data, thinking about how our students are doing, it's got to lead to good collaborative processes, and it's got to improve student success. It's really, really tied to that. So those are the values that drive our committee. And we also have these guiding principles too. The first being positive change. When we talk about assessment processes here on campus, about how to see how students are doing in our classes and how to gather data on that student performance, we really believe that anything that we do has to lead to positive changes. And those obviously tie directly to two of our core themes at NIC: educational excellence, student success. So that really is grounding the work that we do. Also important to us is academic freedom. It's really essential that instructors are in charge of the assessment scales, the grading scales. It's vital that the student data is kept anonymous and used only for instructional purposes. That guides everything that we do in our committee too. And then meaningful practice, again, it's that idea that getting the data alone is not going to drive conversations and change. We have to take the information that's coming in and use it to inform our instruction and to make our teaching better and to make our students do even better and to continuously improve. So those are the principles that guide our committee and the work that we do. So the visual that you see here on the right side is just a kind of a guideline for how this workflow happens on campus. Basically, our committee helps faculty across campus come up with student learning outcomes that are measurable, right? And then we help them, when needed, come up with plans to assess how the students are doing on those learning outcomes. Are they learning what we want them to learn? Are we teaching them the things that we say we are teaching them? We gather information about that based on those assessment plans, and then we help faculty think about what that information means. It might mean that they're doing amazing work and nothing necessarily has to be changed. It might mean that you see some places where assignments need tweaking or where we need to bring people more in line with one another on how they're approaching a particular outcome. And all of this is work that's meant, again, to drive student success, educational excellence. It's meant to bring faculty together to talk about teaching and learning. That's really, really important to us. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the conversations, about teaching, about pedagogy. And then the work that we're doing gives us data points to show how our students are doing and how we can continuously improve our classes. So that's just a general framework for what the work of this committee does. We have, as Lita was mentioning, we've got a couple of really important things that we're proud of from the last year. We've been doing a lot of work with program outcomes assessment. So basically helping our academic programs on campus come up with ways to measure how students are doing when it comes to the program outcomes. And so one of the things that Gail and I did last spring to help faculty members think through how they might map their programs is we applied for a grant from the National Institute of Learning Outcomes Assessment, which we were awarded. And we had a coach, they call them NILOA coaches, and Sandra Bailey from Oregon Tech came to campus at the end of September, and she designed a curriculum mapping workshop specifically for NIC faculty, specifically for our programs. It was attended by faculty and programs from all across campus, and we got a lot of positive feedback on how it helped our faculty think through things like course sequencing. Like, does it make sense that we ask students to take this class and then this class? Maybe it doesn't. She was really getting us to think about those things. One of my favorite parts about it, and others as well, was the way that she got us thinking interdisciplinarily about our programs. So in English, for example, we have critical thinking. Critical reading is one of the program outcomes for our English associate's degree. And in this workshop, as I was going around and talking with other faculty members from other disciplines, it became abundantly clear to me that it's not just being taught in the English department. Critical reading is taught in political science, in history, in philosophy, in sociology, all of these other disciplines. So she helped us make those connections, which all, again, is meant to help better support students in a positive flow as they move through the programs on campus. So we're really, really proud of that. That particular workshop. And then the bulk, a lot of the work, a lot of the kind of heavy lifting over the last couple of years has been in relation to creating a general education assessment plan for our gen ed classes here on campus. We invest a huge amount of time on our committee in coming up with a way to measure how successful students are in the gen ed classes, and that's because they're a vital component of the student experience at NIC. You can see here that the GEM core, it's the foundation of every single AS degree, every single AA degree that we offer at NIC. It's a component, 15 credits of it, for the AAS degrees that are offered here. And these are classes that teach students to read and interpret diverse texts, to develop a sensitivity to different perspectives on materials. These are the classes that teach students to work collaboratively with others, which is not sometimes easy to teach, right? A lot of us kind of work better solo, and these classes really deliberately bring people together. These are the classes that help students express themselves in written forms and in oral forms, and just in general as a suite of classes, they help teach students to adapt to this constantly ever-changing, demanding world that at the drop of a hat changes. So we're really, really excited about the general education assessment plans that this committee has come up with. And I will turn it over to Gail now.
We were fortunate, and we being the Student Learning Outcome Assessment Committee members. So there's a bunch of us from a variety of disciplines across campus. We were really fortunate. Most all faculty have for years and years and years evaluated their course assignments, their course assessments, their course outcomes. Are students achieving them? And then in addition to that, they're used to looking at that information and making changes and growing and learning and improving the course that they deliver and improving the course outcomes for students, including the quantity, the number of students that achieve those outcomes. So we had this strong foundation. And in other courses, in many of the courses, those instructors that taught English 101 or COM 101 all gathered together with their counterparts that taught the similar courses and said, hey, what are you doing, and are we using the same textbook? Are we using the same resources? Are we assessing students in similar matters? So that was already going on. The challenge for GEM assessment in looking at it holistically is the idea that for some of the GEM categories, they cross not only departments, they cross divisions. And so, for instance, GEM 2 is oral communication. That's one class. That's COM 101 is the only class that fulfills the GEM 2 requirement. But in GEM 1, which is written communication, that has two classes, English 101 and English 102. Well, they're in the same division. And so those faculty, they were all communicating together. But when you get to GEM 6, Social and Behavioral Sciences, not only does that cover the classes that are in Social and Behavioral Sciences at this institution, but it also covers economics classes, and it also covers journalism classes. And so now we're working with faculty outside of our divisions, and we're saying, hey, let's talk, and let's share our similarities, and let's discuss all that's going on. So the foundation of what we believe in is, gathered data helps us establish those priorities that eventually then show up, whether it be program review, whether it be action plans, whether it be goals. It all relates together. And then once those are established, we look at them again, and we take those marks again, and we say, oh, how are we doing? And should we continue in this direction? Should we change this? Should we add that? So that's where we're at. Know that these numbers speak for 2018 and 2019. Again, it was built on the foundation of things that were already happening. We just, in the SLOA committee, just enhanced or maybe formalized the process, might be a better explanation. So 4,800 students, and that's a duplicative number because a student might be enrolled in a GEM 1 class at the same time they're enrolled in a Science GEM 3 class, Science GEM 4 class. So know that those numbers are duplicative, but altogether over 4,800 points were looked at when it came to students meeting proficiency or not meeting proficiency. And so we had these data, these points, and then we got together across divisions. We're so proud of the fact that it's all inclusive. We have our dual credit teachers come to campus or meet us wherever they might choose to meet us. We have adjunct faculty. We have full-time faculty. We have everyone sit down and say, hey, what are you doing? What does this look like? What do these results tell us? If we say 82% met proficiency on this one particular outcome, well, why isn't it 100%? Do we want it to be 100%? Oh, but it's better than this one that's at 78%. Where are we? What are we doing? In fact, are we using similar forms of measurement so that we are talking the same language and using the same ideas together? So 4,800 students, and that includes dual credit students, that includes part-time students, that includes full-time students, again, all inclusive. Here's what we found out. Of the 29 competencies, outcomes, measured, the majority of these outcomes, 81 to 95% of the students achieved those outcomes, met those competencies. While that is in bold and that's important, I'm going to direct your attention to the last line on there, because that number we hope to see improvements on that. Perhaps 82 to 99% might be a better set of numbers to aim for, because it's the collaboration amongst faculty. It's what we do when we get together and we say, hey, what does teaching excellence look like? What does a student that meets this outcome, what are they able to produce? What are they able to do? That's what's important. And so perhaps, in hindsight, maybe it's that last statement that should also have been in bold, because that's what the heart of this is all about. We have continued our focus on GEM assessment, and what we found out is by bringing faculty together, oh, that's an enjoyable process. And so now those conversations that were formalized to begin with, now they're happening all the time. And you'll go, you'll walk down a hallway and you'll hear this person talking to that person and this person talking to that person. It might not even be in the same program. It could be in the same division, but it might be across divisions, because we have this common language and this common reference point to begin those conversations and to engage in those conversations. So that's what GEM assessment is all about, and that's the work that SLO is doing. Our next steps is to be really as purposeful and as intentional when we focus on program level assessment. It exists right now. It's going really well right now. We're familiar with program review right now. How can we make it better? And so that's the direction that SLOA is going to, that's the challenge we're taking on. Questions or?
Board, any questions or comments for Laura or Gail?
I do have,
Trustee Howard?
I do have a question. First of all, let me applaud the program itself. The whole idea of doing what we do better can only be achieved with the kinds of things that you're doing. But when I look at the titles, Student Learning Outcomes Assessment, I always get confused by general titles sometimes. And when I see the concept outcomes, I wonder, what do you mean by that?
Those are the things, the skills and abilities that we want students to have when they're finished with a given course or a given program. So it's knowledge and it's skills and abilities.
And do you create lists of those outcomes that you're looking for?
Can I tackle
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
So for GEM in specific, we're guided by policy 3. Sorry. For GEM in particular, we're guided by policy 3N, which is a state board policy. And state board policy says in GEM 1, these are the competencies, these are the outcomes that are expected. The GEM process here on the North Idaho College campus is people had to, I'm not sure this is the correct word, but apply for their course to be considered a GEM course. And so they had these state competencies, policy 3N, and they had to say, in this particular course, History 101, this is how my course outcome, our course outcomes, aligns directly to the first competency. This is how this one aligns to the second competency. And so they had to build a crosswalk of how their GEM course outcomes, the skills, the knowledge that students leave that course with, align exactly to policy 3N in state board policy. So that's how they came up with them. That's how they were vetted. That's how they came to be.
Could I follow up with that?
Absolutely.
I've always thought of formal education as learning how to learn. Fundamentally, learning how to learn is what we do when we come here, because we can take that out to the rest of our lives and apply it to our everyday lives. But there are elements of learning how to learn that may not be a competency as you've described it. Do you try and capture that kind of a quality? People know learning how to learn?
Can I brag? So, in fact, we do. Last semester, we had the opportunity to run a professional development class on campus that was about the book, specific book, Teach Students How to Learn, that focused on, it's faculty focused, and skills that can be incorporated into the everyday classroom to, in fact, teach those skills that you're referring to. As a result of faculty participating in this course, they were showing off data. Oh my goodness, when I tried this, this is what happened, and this is the results with students. But in order to share that data in a formal way, we realize we need to go through the IRB process. So absolutely, yes, we're doing it. The reason it's not showing up on these slides right now is we're getting those final approvals to be able to share the information out, to say, absolutely, yes, these are skills that are equally as important, even though they don't show up on policy 3N from the state board.
One more question, if you don't mind. So are these student learning outcomes assessments being applied to the academic as well as the skills and vocational courses?
Yes. All across campus, no matter what class you are taking, no matter what program you are in, you are not only as a student earning a grade in that class, but that class is being looked at a macro level to see how students in a suite of classes who are all taking English 101 or who are all taking a certain program to
Welding,
well, right, exactly.
culinary arts.
To see how they perform. There are macro level assessments for every student experience really here on campus. And I think that's part of the confusion sometimes, even with faculty. When you talk about student learning outcomes assessment, they'll say things like, I give grades in my class. I'm assessing them all the time, right? And how is this different? And to me, when I think about it, I think about the difference being in my English 278 class, this is how my students perform. But when I look at the whole suite of 200-level literature classes at NIC, how are these students doing on these competencies as a group? And that can tell you a lot of really interesting information about your students and about how they learn and about what makes good work and what makes some of the weaker work and how we can fix and make that work even stronger. So that's the way I always try to think of macro assessment of this sort.
Thank you.
Christy?
Yeah, just real quick. Well, my observation is it's a great level of accountability that you've built in, but it's not meant to be punitive.
Right.
You're all working to increase the excellence in the classroom. So that's fantastic. But you used the words macro level assessment. And so I'm curious, and I don't know if this is something else that's going on campus, but you talked about instructors from cross disciplines. Now they're conversing, which is fantastic. Do they do that to that level with an individual that's struggling? If you have a student and you know someone else has a student, what kind of collaboration is going to that individual?
Yeah, a lot. And I think I probably speak for every faculty member at the North Idaho College campus. If I have a student who's struggling in my English 101 class, and I know that they're also struggling in this other person's communications class, and now with our new Aviso advising software, we have that data in front of us. We can see daily reports about how our students are doing and whether or not they are struggling. And so I feel like the new Aviso software is going to encourage that kind of hands-on intervention for students who are falling behind, and that it happens all the time. We have
That's
hallway
fantastic.
conversations like, let's bring this person, let's raise them up.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. Great work. Great report.
Look, Trustee Banducci, did you have any questions or comments? Laura, Gail, thank you very much, and most importantly, thank you for your leadership in chairing and co-chairing the Student Learning Outcomes Committee. We sure appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, it's time for constituent reports, and Paul McLeod for ASNEC.
Good evening, members of the board, Chair Dunlap, President McClendon, and members of the audience. It's great to be here. Good to be back from break. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday. I'll start off by saying we had our first workshop of the new semester yesterday, bright and early. It was wonderful. We got to welcome 2 new senators, which will be inducting them in our next board meeting. So it's incredibly exciting. They're 2 members that were actually on the events board beforehand, and they're going to continue working with the events board and student government. And it's great to have that collaboration of them having the experience there and now on student government, and really exciting to see the passion that they're coming with. They're very, very excited as well. Also in the meeting, we talked about our 2020 2020-2021 budget. We got it informally approved amongst ourselves before we take it forward to our board meeting where we'll formally approve it. But other than that, we went over some expectations with all of our members to just kind of get on the same page and talk about some of the goals we have for this semester, some of the changes that we want to make. Also, one of our student leaders, Nicholas Espinoza, has finished with his project of creating a student newsletter. Well, it's mostly finished. He sent out the first newsletter on the first day of school, Monday. It was incredibly well done. We're really excited about it. He's going to continue it. Every 2 weeks, they're going to be sending out a new one. I was going to bring a copy for you all to see so you could look it over. I'm afraid the printer, I was having a little bit of trouble getting it working before I came in, so I'm sorry about that. But maybe it got sent to you. If not, then I'd be happy to get it to you so you can have a look at it, because it's by the students, for the students, and it's just kind of a brief update on what's going on with students. Let's see. The Student Events Board has been working hard. They're planning an event for every month, at least one event every month. Coming up in April, on the 21st, we have an event planned in remembrance of the National Holocaust Remembrance Day. We're going to be putting on something for that. And also something else we brought up in our meeting is the recent safety audit that happened around campus. A lot of useful information came out of that, but something that we realized is we wanted to promote a culture of safety on campus for the students at NIC, and so we'll be likely coming through with a resolution fairly soon promoting that cause of making NIC a safer campus, really. I believe that's all I have for you. I'm happy to take any questions now.
Any questions, comments for Paul?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Your comment about your newsletter, that's kind of interesting. It'll be interesting to see how students sort of communicate with themselves. And I'm wondering, is that the way you described it? It almost sounded like a hard copy. Are you going to put that on the website?
It's sent out electronically. There's also, it's similar to the Nick Now, the employee newsletter, except for it's going to be a lot more condensed. It's really just a one-pager sent out by email. It's in order to save trees and not have as many waste products, we're not really going to be sending out as many hard copies. It's going to be mostly electronic, and it's also got links inside of it that you can take to different things. This is something that we want to use to promote some of the services that ASLING provides and the school provides, such as attorney counseling and the food pantry, things that a lot of students are not aware of that we want to help students know about so they can take advantage of those things.
Good. We get the Nick Now, so make sure and put us on your mailing list, would you?
I would love to.
Good.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Howard.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
All right. Thank you.
Jeff, it looks like you're standing in for Tom Green, Staff Assembly.
Rest assured, there has not been a coup. Tom will be back. And so he called me later this afternoon and said, yeah, guess what you get to do? And I am happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me, trustees, Chair Dunlap, President McLennan, Council, President's Cabinet, and guests and colleagues. Nice to see everyone. This will be short, as our last staff assembly meeting was post-holiday, very much post-holiday, and there might have been some residual. So, we were delighted to have Mr. Chris Martin as our guest speaker, and one has to admit there are not many schools where when staff assembly meets and they go, who's going to be our speaker, and somebody says Chris Martin, everybody, woo, he's a popular guy. He did present to us on the FY20 update for the budget. I won't go into great detail because you've all been presented that over and over, I'm sure. And again, only Chris Martin can make budget cuts and attrition sound fun. So we really appreciate that, sir. Our biggest takeaways was the new early retirement policy, savings through attrition, and strategic use of general fund reserves. It came time for reports. Well, the Senate hadn't met, so there wasn't a lot to report there as yet. And there was not a President's Advisory Council update, as we had not had one of those yet. Look forward to that on the 21st. At the end, we have a staff assembly forum. It's a really, it's a great way for our fellow employees to just kind of bring up anything they'd like, and they do. And it's always very civil. It's always a great time for us to kind of bring things forward or just make announcements from our particular divisions and departments. And we are on Zoom when we do this, so everyone across the campus can enjoy it. We were told from the good folks at Grounds and Maintenance that please wear appropriate footwear, as it's now really icy out there, and we do have accidents from time to time. And some of you may remember that Erin Norville used to be our director at HR. She has come back to us on kind of a temporary basis, not in a full-time capacity, but she has come to join us to give talks on various HR matters, such as her latest one is conducting interviews and selection committees and how they can best be utilized for the right candidate. It's something that we haven't had a lot of lately, so it's been really great to have her back. She's a dynamic speaker, and it's been really fun attending the demonstrations and talks that she puts on. And that's really all I have to say. If anybody has any comments or questions, I'm taking them now.
Comments or questions for Jeff? All right, Jeff, thank you very much.
Bless you.
Next, Faculty Assembly, Chris Pelchat.
Chair Dunlap, President McLennan, fellow board members, everyone else gathered here today. I am here to provide a summary of the December and January faculty assembly meetings. Apologize for my lack of attendance in December. I had a conflicting appointment in Cabo San Lucas. At the December faculty assembly meeting, we began with both a Senate report and a chair report. As the chair, I mentioned that Dr. Dunlap had been placed at the helm of the Board of Trustees, which resulted in a round of applause. Should be happy about that. I also discussed the need for filling a standing committee that had fallen by the wayside for a few years. This committee is the Employee Complaint Committee. And this committee required a formal vote of faculty for its membership. So I was able to get a slate of candidates before that meeting so that when we had the meeting, we could actually have a vote. And then after that vote was conducted, the selected members were forwarded to Human Resources for processing. Under our old business, we continued discussion on Policy and Procedure 3.0208, which I've mentioned a couple times. I made some clarifications about some of the questions that had been brought up at the November meeting, but that policy and procedure remains in the parking lot until we get further questions answered about librarian titling. Under new business for December, Ken Wardinski was on deck to present the state of the planning process here at NIC, and he wowed us with his really cool video and led a discussion with the faculty, and folks were appreciative of the efforts that those folks have been working on. At the January meeting, we also started with our Senate report and chair report, and as the chair, I discussed the differences in approval processes between policies and procedures to see if faculty might entertain the idea of approving policy and procedure in separate votes to get the policy to the Board of Trustees and get it through that 2-month process. But the faculty decided that they would like those two to remain together and be voted on at the same time if there is a procedure following a policy. So that we kept with that. Under old business, 3.0208 faculty employment, quick discussion on that. Still waiting for some things to be discussed around librarian titling. Under new business, we had Diana Renz come, and she provided a fantastic overview of the Planning and Effectiveness Office and how the campus can best utilize her as a resource. And this provided some desired clarity from the faculty about Diana's office and how the faculty can use that resource. And it was great to have her there to do that. That's the end of my report, so open for questions if you have any.
Any questions, comments for Chris?
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The Senate, Ben Teshida.
Chair Dunlap, members of the board, thank you for having me here today. The Senate has not met since the last Board of Trustees meeting, so I'll just give you a brief overview of our upcoming events. Tomorrow is our next meeting. We'll be discussing the copyright policy, as well as the President's Advisory Committee, Standing Committee, proposal that's been forwarded on to us. And that's what we have for tomorrow. Slated for the rest of the semester, we do have doubled up meetings every month in anticipation of extra policies, and those are now rolling in. Coming up, we have the employee categories policy, that's 3.01. We have the filling of vacant positions with benefits policy and procedure, 3.0203. We have the reclassifications policy and procedure, 3.02.33. We have also then the committee's procedure only, 2.0301. The committee's procedure was worked on by the staff assembly and faculty assembly chairs, along with Shannon Goodrich, to try and update our process a little bit. And so we've got that proposal coming forward.
Okay, Ben, thank you. Any comments, questions for Ben?
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President's report, Dr. McClendon.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just want to add my appreciation to Gail and Laura. I know Laura's left now, but that's probably one of the best examples of engagement around student learning outcomes that I've ever seen, and I could not be more grateful for that. You know, as we're heading into our full-scale evaluation for our 7-year visit in April, and one of I guess the biggest theme around mission fulfillment and how we meet the standards is really around that cycle of planning and assessment, whether it's institutional effectiveness, strategic planning, program evaluation and review, and certainly student learning's outcome. And you saw the way we're going through that cycle and closing the loop over and over again on student learning's outcomes assessment work. So congratulations and thank you. And the level of faculty engagement is phenomenal. And you know, kudos and good luck keeping that going. I'm really happy to see that. I also want to thank Paul. Paul served as MC for Convocation on Tuesday morning and stole the show. The results are in. He is by far was the most popular aspect of that feature. I also want to thank Trustee Dunlap for making some welcoming remarks as well. Paul, thank you for getting us kicked off in such a positive way this semester and bringing that enthusiasm and energy and connecting to every person who had a seat in the auditorium how important the work they do is to you and every student who attends North Idaho College. You just did a fantastic job. And then I want to welcome everybody sitting out there in the audience, but I especially want to welcome a young lady in the very back of the room. That is Lissa. The board may have seen her at the workshop when we were going through the Meyer Health Sciences expansion. Lissa's a student at GEM Prep and is enthusiastically here as part of a class assignment to view, watch this meeting and then write about it. So welcome. And And thanks to Jeff's report here, you can see we do laugh occasionally at these meetings as well. So next week, I will be headed down to Boise for Education Week. They've stretched things out a little bit this time. Monday morning, we begin with the 9 o'clock presentation. Once again, the four community college presidents will be presenting jointly to the House Higher Ed Committee. That's Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And then we go all the way to Wednesday at 3 p.m. before we get in front of the Senate Higher Ed Committee. So there's a pretty significant gap there. In between that, on Tuesday evening, there will be a reception in the Crystal Ballroom where all 8 public higher education presidents will be interacting. It's a legislative reception, and it's a low numbers from the institutions. It's primarily the idea with the state board is to get the 8 presidents in front of the legislature to help with relationship building and communication. So it's the first time we've tried something like that. We'll see how that goes. Last board meeting, we had some discussion about finding alternative methods for the board to engage with legislators because of the nature of legislative week and how it's scaled back in terms of our ability to tell storytelling about our successes in the work that we do in the community colleges, and primarily in that interaction with JFAC. I think I've got 2 or 3 minutes this time, a very brief statement to make for JFAC. So that ability to try to translate what we're doing in that financial conversation has been greatly diminished. The idea of creating a letter to under the signature line of all 20 elected trustees in the state of Idaho was discussed. I talked with the other, my counterparts at the other institutions about that idea, thought it was a good idea, all thought it was going to be incredibly difficult to wrangle one letter and 20 trustees across the entire state in a manageable time frame, but we think we can do it. We offered to take the lead on drafting some sort of a mock-up of what that might look like. I've provided the trustees with a copy of that. That is just a starting point, and what I'd like to do is forward that to Joe or to all of you. I asked Laura to take some of the things that she and I talked about and try to write that from the perspective of a trustee. Of course, neither one of us is a trustee, so she took some risks with that. I pulled back on a couple of them. I can give you the version that has all those risks in it if you'd like to see it. Anyway, so what we, I think from a process perspective or a timing perspective, would like to shoot for mid-February, mid to that third week in February to try to at least have this circulated through all the colleges, and then we're asking for more input, obviously, and I don't know until we go through this how unwieldy it will become. It has potential to become very unwieldy. Trying to keep it as simple as possible conceptually, and but get the voice of the trustees out there. So you have that. That's a starting point. And any questions or comments about that? Yes, Trustee.
So the letter's intent is to go to the governor to express concern about his proposed budget with regard to the community colleges. Will that also go out to all the legislators?
So I think that's an open question. That's something that as we work this across the state, that would be one of the ideas that would be there. My initial thought was it would be addressed to the governor and copied to the legislature in both houses so that they could see what has been said on behalf of the trustees of the community colleges, the elected officials. But I think you all have to decide the best pathway for that.
When I looked at the draft and I saw it was addressed just to the governor, my reaction was, I think we need to address it to the governor and to the legislature, because some of what we're complaining about, much of what we're complaining about, is in the hands of the legislature.
Right.
and some of it's in the hands of the governor, obviously. And hopefully, as we go through this process, it'll not just be to state some of our concerns, but also to suggest some remedies. How can trustees have a better say in some of the issues that come before the government? So I would think something like that needs to go to both the governor and to the legislature. I guess it depends on what the letter looks like in the end, but.
So, Trustee Howard, again, I completely agree. And this is truly just a starting point. I've thought of some things in there that, some encouragement for the governor and the legislature to work together on helping us solve these problems. Some language in there. But again, this is just a starting point, and I'm hoping that of our 5 trustees, that one or more of you will take a look at this and give us back something that we can work with in trying to get this thing moving.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Well, this is fantastic. I think this is a good communication piece, and I agree with beyond just the governor's office. But since we already have a consortium in place, why couldn't we ask, maybe they already are, ask those leaders, Dr. Dunlap and the others and the presidents, to be sort of a legislative committee? Because we no longer have that on campus. I'd like to get back to that at some point in time. I'd love to see our campus have a legislative committee. But for the purpose of this session, to do, because it won't just be one letter, there'll be ongoing things. Maybe that consortium could be a legislative committee. Any discussion about that?
I think that's a great idea. I think one of the comments that I made in December was I really wish we had the discussion we were having at the board meeting in December before Joe and I went down to the ICCC meeting, because the timing would have been perfect for us to have that, because we spent a lot of time talking about the legislative barriers and things that are going on. So we don't have an ICCC meeting scheduled, but that doesn't mean we can't approach it that way, virtually.
You do email conversations,
Exactly.
right? Great.
So I'll be, next week, the 4 presidents will be meeting after we do our House higher ed presentation. And this is the logistics of doing this, and that suggestion will be topics that I'll be bringing up to discuss to see if we can get that moving.
And then I guess included in that committee would obviously be Laura and her counterparts possibly at the other institutions, the actual boots on the ground. So just a thought.
Okay.
Anything else?
I do. Tomorrow, I've been invited to join the foundation board for their annual retreat. They will be looking at their own planning efforts to build on the last version of this that they did a year or so ago. And I've been invited to talk about some of the needs of the college, with the college perspective, and some of that you'll notice obviously comes clear in the integrated planning document that you were presented last month, and that we're going to talk about again tonight. There's a interest on the part of the foundation board and the college to, if you recall, we had the joint board meeting a year ago, December, and that turned into one of, I thought, a very robust and rich conversation about a lot of things. But as we got toward the end of that discussion, we really drilled into primarily that first goal, access, completion, and transfer to an extent, but really access primarily and affordability primarily. And this year, the foundation has tipped over $1 million in scholarship aid, but we know, I just read a document that we're submitting for our Student Support Services Grant program, our TRIO program, that lays out the context of the students who attend NIC and the great need both around financial need, but also the percentage of students who are first generation and the barriers that they need to overcome to not only not just to be successful here, but just to get here. And so, again, drawing off that conversation that we began last December, 2 Decembers ago now, and building on a comment that Trustee Dunlap made at the last Foundation Board meeting, the capital needs are not as front and foremost in terms of the fundraising needs. We've got Meyer Health and Sciences expansion in hand, and Trustee Dunlap made the comment that what the foundation could really help with is raising scholarship dollars for the programs in that building. And so to take that up a level and look at how do we shoot for a goal of awarding $2 million in aid. You know, the Alice population, that's access limited, income challenged, but employed, in a sense working poor, in Coeur d'Alene, a report I saw a year or so ago was really bumping up to 50%, and that's at that working poor down to poverty level in Coeur d'Alene alone. That's probably one of the most bifurcated communities in the region in terms of the sort of the haves and have-nots. And so we know that the number one barrier for many of those students and families is going to be around affordability, both the lost opportunity of working while they're going to school and then the actual cost of attendance. So I plan to present this as a priority for the Foundation Board in my comments tomorrow, and that it will be a facilitated discussion. We have a gentleman coming in from Indiana, actually he's already here, and he's going to lead the Foundation Board through some actual pragmatic, practical steps on how to move their work forward. And then lastly, I just want to do a little commercial for a new communication medium we have called NIC Amped. This is a podcast. We've just completed our second one. And this is really, the intent for these podcasts is to share everything about that makes NIC interesting, engaging, and unique. It's to promote the exchange of ideas and information while building relationships across the communities that we serve. It's produced by the communications and marketing team. And episode 1, as you can see, was all about entrepreneurship at NIC. I had the opportunity to sit down with Ryan Arnold and Gail Ballard to talk more deeply about some of the efforts we have around innovation and entrepreneurship, and around problem solving, collaboration, and innovation. And it's only a 21 or 22 minute long podcast. You'll see a web link there, but we'll push the link out to the trustees so that you can listen to that. We've had hundreds of hits on these podcasts already on the website, and so they're starting to get a lot of play. The marketing team's doing a pretty good job, a great job of pushing this out through social media and some of the newer formats to get people engaged with the campus. The second episode was on our NIC athletics, and we have a new athletics director and some new coaches, and it's a little bit longer conversation. But it talks about the vision in the future and where the philosophy of our athletics programs and where that's going. I wasn't a part of that podcast, but I encourage you to listen to that one as well. The third one, that is, I think we're planning that for the end of the month. We still have a little bit of work to do on setting this up, is going to be around free speech issues on college campuses, in particular NIC. And what are the constraints around that? What are some of the issues around speech and freedom of speech? And so, again, very topical, but I commend that to you. And I believe that ends my report. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one quick question. How often are the podcasts? This will be your third one. Are you doing one a month?
I think we're shooting monthly, yeah.
One a month, okay, great. And on the free speech issue, I'd just like to comment that this is the campus that hosted Reverend Richard Butler for a debate. So we have a wonderful track record around free speech.
Any other comments for
Thank you.
Dr. McLennan? Chris, do you have any update for Meyer Health Science expansion?
Chair Dunlap, members of the board, we had a workshop this afternoon just to review the progress and where we are at this point, and we'll be moving forward into the construction documents phase so that we can hit the appropriate and good bid climate coming up in the spring.
Thank you. Dr. McLennan, we have an action item related to North Idaho College strategic plan.
Thank you. So this is the second presentation of this to the board. You saw this in December. The background in your tab reads from coordinated work conducted throughout the college since the fall of 2016, including the various phases of developing an initial planning structure through the activities of Cultivate NIC. The college has created an integrated strategic plan. The plan organizes the goals and strategic objectives on which the college will focus over the next 3 to 5 years, and that tie directly to our accreditation efforts and achievement of mission fulfillment. The board was presented, as I said, an outline of the integrated strategic plan during the December meeting. And the requested action is the board consider a motion to endorse the outline of the North Idaho College integrated strategic plan.
Any discussion related to our integrated planning? Trustee Howard.
Yes. Some of this is new from what we had last month, but I think it just augments it in many ways. But I had actually, consistent with the President's comments on affordability, I looked through it and no place in this strategic plan does it talk about affordable student access. And affordability should be a concept that is included, I would think, in our integrated planning. And I would suggest, as I looked through this, on the goals and strategic objectives, where it says ensure students access, that we include the term affordable, so it ensure affordable student access, completion, and transfer. I have some other suggestions, but go ahead if you want to comment to that.
Sure. So this is the, as you drill down into this and you start to get into the actual initiatives and the activities that address these things, in their draft form, not ready for full presentation yet, there are specific initiatives that relate to financial access. So looking at the strategic alignment of the institutional grant and aid, the scholarship, the foundation scholarship programs those things are addressed in the actual activities that would fulfill this access, completion, and transfer goal.
I would imagine that in the application, the concept of affordability is going to be there someplace, but why shouldn't it be announced in the fundamental outlines that we start out with to ensure affordable student access, completion, and transfer? It seems to me that that is something that clearly as a board, we deal with every budget cycle. You know, how do we keep from raising student tuition costs, and how do we try and provide the kind of education necessary that is affordable? I would like to see that, quite frankly, in the bold integrated planning outlines. We did the same thing when we came to the explaining the values, the accreditation core themes. Affordability is not in there anyplace. And it could be, under student success, a vibrant lifelong learning environment that engages students as partners in achieving affordable educational goals to enhance their quality of life. I mean, that becomes then one of our announced in the bold letters, if you will. I would recommend that we use that term in both of those locations.
So you do see in the, Trustee Howard, in the vision piece, the term affordable in there.
Where's that?
Oh, under vision.
Under vision, yes, we do.
I mean, I don't have any difficulty adding the word affordable in front of access to that. there are other things that come with access, completion, and transfer in addition to affordable, high-quality instruction, accessible in multiple places and times. But I agree that affordability is a big piece of what's, I just said it, it's what's.
You did.
It's what's driving or not driving access to our institution.
And while I appreciate there are a lot of components to this, I think, again, my recommendation would be that we put affordability into this, this policy. I have one other suggestion under diversity, and it may be just the way I read things, but it says a learning environment that celebrates the uniqueness of all individuals and encourages cultural competency. I'm not sure what cultural competency is something that's easily understood by a lot of people. To me, I think I'm competent in my own culture, but I would think that what we ought to be doing is saying that the uniqueness of all individuals encourages diverse cultural understanding. And that's really what we're all about, is trying to help people understand diverse cultures and have an understanding of it. And the word competency, to me, is something that quite frankly, doesn't have a whole lot of meaning. Anyway, that would be my suggestion. It encourages diverse cultural understanding.
So I'm trying to track.
On diversity, under the 6.0.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Under
So
the
that
values.
language is taken directly from our current core themes, which Dr. Burns is going to be talking about in just a minute or so. So that language is not new language and not part of this actual integrated planning work that's been done. And that's not something that we're asking for endorsement on. We can change that, and we can address that, but that's separate work from this work.
Again, it was presented to me as something that's part of this package of integrated planning. And as I look at it, those were my comments were that we ought to put affordable in that, and we should make sure that what we're trying to accomplish in diversity is to create a diverse cultural understanding across cultures.
Understood.
I somewhat disagree with that in that the values, our accreditation core themes, have been in place for many years, and the definitions associated with those core themes have been in place for many years as well. And so I'm not sure at this point we ought to be changing that definition. I certainly do not object to including affordable under affordable access, and affordable is included in our vision statement already, and our mission, vision, and values have been in existence for quite some time. And so if the intent is to make that more prominent, then adding that in our goal or strategic objectives may be the way to go. But I'm not suggesting, or I'm not supportive of changing the definition of our core theme, diversity.
Trustee Dunlap, Trustee Howard, we would run into some pretty significant earlier in the workshop. I mentioned the changing rules of the occupancy costs in terms of capital planning. From an accreditation perspective, we have to be able to demonstrate over a long period of time how we have used these core values to organize our work and achieve them, and we have measures that we have used over the course of this accreditation cycle to report both to the board and to the accreditors on what we are doing to achieve these core themes and how they integrate with our strategic planning and the actual work of the college. And so to shift that right now in this year 7 of the accreditation visit, when we're actually documenting that work in the context of this language and those stated outcomes, would be, I would advise us to go down that road.
I mean, I guess my comments were made because I think that these are changes that really express who we are, not who we want to. And so I don't think we're changing anything by way of historical measurements or historical ways of stating who we are. Just, I think it makes it clearer that affordability is one of our goals, and under the diversity that we're trying to create a diverse understanding. So it's not a matter of changing the content or the meaning. It's, in my judgment, making who we are more understandable.
And
Anyway, I've made my comments, and you asked for comments, and
We appreciate your comments.
good.
Mr. Chair,
Trustee Wood?
I'm good with the affordable, whether it's included here after, in between student access, or if it's a bullet point down here. I think affordable says a lot about us. We've always talked about how affordable we are, so that makes sense to me. I hear what you're saying, Dr. McLennan, about changing a definition right now in the middle of the accreditation. We're almost done, but maybe we could revisit after we're all done.
But there's a, Trustee Wood, in fact, as the standards have been changed, future forward, and we're in this kind of middle territory right now of having to be accountable to the standards that have been changed now, and the core themes are not necessarily a feature of the work going forward. So we may translate this a little differently in terms of values or strategic values, or however we want to do that, but it may not be the actual core themes. These core themes will likely go away in the form that they're in right now as we go into the future. And the other thing I wanted to ask, because I'm getting this very piercing, knowing look from Dr. Burns. No, but this is just an abbreviated language for this diversity core theme. There's other language around that. This is a full language. Okay, then I take that all the way back.
And that's fine. I mean, I don't object to the language. And I'm sure there was a lot of thought that went into it. I was just looking for a compromise.
Well, there's nothing to compromise. I made a comment, and I'm not going to object to these. I just thought the suggestions I made would make the disclosures more accurate.
Duly noted.
Well, the administration is looking for an affirmation of the strategic planning process. And so if it's not objectionable, maybe we could have a motion that suggests adding the term affordable to student access, and then being supportive of the integrated planning process for 2020.
I'm happy to make that motion. I make a motion to add the language affordable under ensuring student access, and then to endorse the outline of the North Idaho College Integrated Strategic Plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of endorsing the plan, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. New business, we don't have any, but we are looking forward to hearing about our accreditation core themes update. How timely.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes I get in trouble for messing with the equipment. I didn't want to get in trouble. Chair Dunlap, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity this evening to give you maybe an update and possibly a refresher on our accreditation core themes. And great that you provided me such a wonderful segue into this discussion, and perhaps took some of the thunder out of what I'm going to say. as I was listening to President Dunlap, again, what I'm most excited about is what he was saying is much of what I was going to say, so at least we are on the same page and think alike about our accreditation core themes. To start with, the core themes are referred to by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities as essential elements of the college mission. So they provide a framework that leads the work of the college, leads us towards mission fulfillment, which is extremely important. I would like to take just a step back and maybe provide a little bit of the history of how North Idaho College developed their core themes. So there was a planning process, I believe under the leadership of President Priscilla Bell, that looked at our mission statement and our values. And the core themes that were just up on the screen and that you have before you are the value statements, and were the adopted value statements for North Idaho College. So when, around 2010, I believe, when the Northwest Commission provided a new set of standards, one of the requirements of those standards is that the colleges develop these core themes that lead towards mission fulfillment for the colleges and universities. North Idaho College, when we found out about that, we decided that rather than developing new core themes, that we should adopt our value statements. So you will recall that we went through this very trying time where in 3 years we went through an entire 7-year cycle of the accreditation process in 3 years. And in 2013, when they gave us our review, one of the feedback that they provided for us is, you've got way too many core themes. Those are going to be hard to manage, they're going to be hard to evaluate, they're going to be hard to measure, all of that sort of thing. And so we thought, okay, let's pull them back a little bit, and we thought we could pull back to about 3 core themes, and it would be the first 3 core themes. It was student success, educational excellence, and community engagement. We brought that back to our campus community as the members of the accreditation team brought that back to the campus community, and there was a little bit of an outcry against that. Our campus community really felt like it was these 5 values that totally and completely represented North Idaho College and did not want to get rid of stewardship and did not want to get diversity. And so at that time, those values were, 1, reaffirmed, and 2, they were secondly permanently adopted as our core themes for accreditation. So again, just a little bit of that background, and that's where we are. We've held those all these years. The other thing about the core themes is that they provide us a means of assessment for measuring how we are meeting mission fulfillment. And the measurements we use come from a variety of reporting sources, things like the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data Systems, which is often referred to as IPEDS, the Voluntary Framework of Accountability, sometimes referred to as VFA, the state longitudinal data sets that have been around for about 5 or 6 years now, and then some internal measures that we use. So those are the resources we use to measure our core themes and as indicators whether we are meeting the marks on mission fulfillment. I can't work left-handed. So I'm a bit embarrassed that as I present the NIC's core themes, you will notice that I didn't put the definitions. I felt like they were so widely known and widely understood that I didn't even put those up there. So great that we have a team that works together and you have those definitions in front of you, but these are our 5 core themes for North Idaho College. I want just to provide you an overview of the assessment process we use to measure these core themes. Under those 5 core themes, we have 7 objectives. So 4 of them have two objectives and 1 has 1. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anyway, 7 objectives for these core themes. And we give a score to each of the measures related to the objectives. And we compare those over a 3-year mean average to come up with a rating scale. And you see before you there what the rating scale is. And we do that on an annual basis. We've done that on an annual basis. We have missed one year in the last 3 years, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So we call our measures the common campus measures. And I'm providing you some examples of the common campus measures for each core theme. I'm not putting them all up there because in total we have 43 common campus measures that help us measure the 7 objectives and the 5 core themes. So under student success, you can see we look at things like unduplicated head count. And for overall, we look at that same measure for dual credit students. We look at our retention rates. We look at CTE concentrators and how they've achieved positive placement. So again, just examples of those measures. Under educational excellence, we look at the licensure pass rate for many of our programs, students' perceptions of faculty and advisor interaction, and technical skills assessment performance that's primarily in our CTE area. Under community engagement, we're looking at things like unduplicated headcount of non-credit students that, and how NIC serves in our NIC service area. And also the student evaluations of the community education courses are among the common campus measures for those core themes. And then when we look at stewardship, private donations and grants that NIC obtains, tuition revenue as a percentage of the total revenue, composite financial indicator scores, and energy consumption per square foot. Again, examples. And diversity, percentage of students enrolled from diverse populations, a cohort of completion rates for diverse populations, the number of degree-seeking students meeting proficiency outcomes for the identified general education diversity competencies. That particular indicator is a fairly new indicator for us at North Idaho College. So when we look at it in sum, NIC defines mission fulfillment when the mean of the core themes shows the college is consistently progressing or meeting expectations. And our indicator for 2019 was a score of 2.4. Remembering back that anything above 2.1 was either consistently progressing or as it raises meeting expectations. I've also provided a graph of the 3 of the last 4 years of our core theme measurements. And so what have we learned from all of this? As I explained before, our core themes are our core values. And I think that through this process, one of the things that we've come to understand is that they work a lot better as values than they do as core themes, particularly because some are so much harder to measure than others. We have had great success in providing measurements for student success, educational excellence, and stewardship. We've struggled a little bit more trying to find meaningful measurements for the community engagement and diversity. That's probably because those other 3, you can assign numerical values to much of the things we're assessing, whereas community engagement, it's really hard to measure the difference it makes to have community members come down to enjoy our concerts, to enjoy our plays. Community members become engaged in some of our other social activities on this campus, or taking classes just for the sake of learning, not necessarily towards a degree. Really hard to get our hands on numbers that are associated with it, so really trying to find measures for that has been difficult for us. We also recognize that we have way too many common campus measures. Measuring 43 to try to get to some endpoint is a bit unmanageable, probably because we have 5 core themes or 5 core values at our institution. So as we move forward, as Dr. McLennan has indicated, NWCCU has recently changed their standards and as of 2020 and will no longer require institutions to use core themes unless they choose to use core themes. And as we are writing our final chapter for our self-study, we have been discussing that we will probably not move forward actually using the term core themes and allow these to return to be our core values. What that means for us, though, is that we will continue to have to provide measures, absolute measures, to demonstrate that we are meeting mission fulfillment. The focus from NWCCU moving forward really has to do with student learning. So much of what you heard earlier this evening about student learning outcomes is a part of that. But NWCCU also wants us to demonstrate that not only in our classroom settings are we measuring and speaking to and evaluating the learning that goes on, it's really is in all settings across the institution. So what we do with student activities, you know, when we have community events where we expect students to be present and participate in those, how are we measuring the student learning outcomes that occur in all those settings? And so we will be working towards that in the future. I think that this will actually also lead us into the workshop that we will be having next month in February on when we present to you the final product of our self-study and really be engaging with you in a dialogue about that 5th chapter of what it looks like when we move forward and the things that we will be looking for to use as mission fulfillment at this institution. I think, as Trustee Howard brought up, it might be time for us to look at the definitions of our values. I think moving forward, this would be a great time to reset our values for the institution, and it would be up to you, of course, whether we considered resetting the mission statement or not. But certainly this is the opportunity, I think, to make those happen as we close out this cycle of accreditation and move into the next cycle of accreditation. So I'm open for questions if you have questions about this.
Questions for Lita?
Good work.
Thank you, Lita.
You're welcome.
Board Chair report will be very, very brief. I also, with Dr. McLennan, will be attending the annual strategic planning session for the foundation tomorrow. And we're looking forward to seeing what that foundation board is looking forward to for the next several years. Also, Dr. McLennan, I appreciate you taking the leadership on preparing a letter that would go to the governor's office and then go to our legislators as well. I think it's important for us and the other community colleges to articulate the impact that the proposed budget actually has on the colleges. And lastly, I was remiss in not having the mission statement read. We normally do that before every meeting, and so I will make sure we don't skip that in the future.
It's not too late.
Okay. At this time, we'll have Trustee Howard read the mission statement.
North Idaho College meets the diverse educational needs of students, employers, and the northern Idaho communities it serves through a commitment to student success, educational excellence, community engagement, and lifelong affordable learning.
Excellent. Very, very good, Trustee Howard. I won't disagree with you on that. The workshop that Lita mentioned with regard to accreditation will be held on February 19th, and I think that's at 4 in the afternoon, and we're looking forward to that. Are there any comments for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Wood.
I also noticed, and I don't know, maybe Trustee Banducci, maybe there wasn't a KTEC meeting. Usually there's a KTEC report. Has there not been a board meeting? Okay. And then the other thing is, I understand Trustee Banducci is going to speak to Pachyderm on Friday about the college, and I was curious if you're going to talk about the ACT conference and all the good stuff that came out of that?
Actually, I spoke to the North Idaho Pachyderms this last Friday morning. I'll be speaking to the Panhandle Pachyderms this Friday at lunch. The ACCT conference was not a particular topic at the last one, just due to time constraints and questions. It's possible I could speak to that at some point. We'll kind of see how it goes.
Okay.
There's lots of interest in a number of different areas of the college at this time.
All right. Do they go with you? Does administration go?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you invite them?
It's posted on my NIC trustee page. It's posted on my Facebook page personally. I do send out some emails to,
No, I just see it as a great opportunity. I don't know, Dr. McLennan, have you ever been invited to one of those meetings before?
we were together at one, actually, sir.
I
believe.
was invited to the
Reagan Republicans. We were
Republican
together.
a meeting last year, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's good to go to those.
And I gave a short presentation about the college, and it was very well received.
Great. All right, thanks.
Trustee Howard?
No, I don't have any questions.
Oh,
It's 27 after 7.
yes, we have a basketball game to get to.
7:30.
3 minutes. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.